The argent dawn floated through the deep silence of space, a silver arrow cutting across a sea of black. Captain Elias Moran stood on the bridge, his hands behind his back, eyes fixed on the endless horizon of stars. He had seen 1,000 strange things in his career. Nebulae that glowed like living creatures, storms of light that tore apart comets, ruins of forgotten civilizations drifting between worlds. But this mission felt different. It was quiet. Too quiet. The crew called it a research voyage, a simple survey of the outer Syrian expanse, a region where even signals faded into nothing. But Elias knew that wasn't the full truth. Their real purpose was hidden in sealed orders from the Terran Science Directorate. And the scientist who carried those orders, Dr. Leora Hale, was a mystery all by herself. She had joined the crew 2 weeks ago without introduction or small talk. When she walked into the ship for the first time, it was almost as if she brought silence with her. The usual laughter and chatter among the crew dimmed, replaced by a quiet curiosity. She was young, maybe in her early 30s, with calm eyes that seemed older than her face. Her voice was soft but steady, like someone who spoke only when words mattered. Elias remembered their first meeting. He had offered her a polite smile and said, "Welcome aboard, Dr. Hale. I hope the accommodations are satisfactory." She had looked around the metallic hallway, the humming lights reflecting in her eyes. "It's fine, Captain," she said simply. Then after a pause she added, "I only need quiet space to listen." To listen? Elias had repeated, unsure what she meant. "To the stars," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. That was how it began. A quiet woman who listened to stars and a captain who didn't yet understand what that meant. Over the next few days, Leora settled into her work in the ship's observatory. The observatory was a circular room with tall, transparent panels that showed the full glory of space. Most scientists filled it with noise, machines, chatter, analysis screens. But Leora turned most of them off. She sat alone, headphones on, surrounded by faint waves of light and sound. The crew whispered about her in the mess hall. "She doesn't eat with anyone," said Ensign Rao. "She just drinks tea and stares at the spectrum readouts for hours." "She's probably one of those quantum linguists," another replied. "You know, the ones who think the universe is trying to talk to us." Elias didn't join the gossip, but he was curious. One night, unable to sleep, he walked quietly into the observatory. Leora was there, still working, her face lit by a soft blue glow. Her screen showed strange waveforms, rhythmic pulses hidden deep in background static. They looked almost like music notes. "You should get some rest, Doctor," he said gently. "I will," she replied without looking up, "but I think I'm close." "To what?" She took off her headphones and looked at him. "To hearing something no one has heard in a very, very long time." He frowned. "You mean an alien signal?" "Not exactly," she said. "Something older. Something human." That answer stayed with him for hours after he left the room. Something human, she had said. But how could there be a human signal out here beyond any known exploration routes? The Argent Dawn drifted farther into the Sirion expanse. The further they went, the stranger the readings became. Electromagnetic noise thickened like fog. Communications began to fade, even between decks. The stars seemed dimmer. Leora grew even quieter, if that was possible. She barely ate. She slept in short bursts and kept a small recording device with her at all times. Elias noticed she began humming under her breath, soft, wordless tones that sounded eerily like the signal waves on her screen. Finally, Elias called her to the bridge. "Dr. Hale," he said, his voice calm but firm, "the crew's getting uneasy. You've been working nonstop, and the readings out there, they're making everyone nervous. What exactly are we looking for?" Leora studied him for a long moment before answering. "Captain, do you know the first sound humans ever sent into space?" He blinked, surprised by the question. "A broadcast, wasn't it? A radio message from Earth in the 21st century?" She nodded. "Yes, a simple one. Music, greetings, and a map of our world. They sent it out into the dark, hoping someone would answer. But no one ever did." Her eyes flicked to the window. Until now, the bridge went silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. Elias's second officer, Lieutenant Voran, turned in his seat. "You're saying someone answered the first message?" "No," Leora said softly. "I'm saying something repeated it." Elias leaned forward. "Repeated?" "The signal I've been tracking, it's not alien. It's human, but it's coming back from the far side of the expanse, thousands of light years beyond where the original message should have ever reached. Her hands trembled slightly. Something reflected it. Something listened. That night, Elias stood alone in his quarters, staring out at the dark. A part of him wanted to believe her, that somewhere out there humanity's old message had finally found an ear. But the other part, the soldier in him, whispered that some mysteries were better left untouched. Still, he couldn't ignore the feeling growing in his chest, a strange, hopeful ache. What if she was right? 2 days later, the Argent Dawn reached the edge of the expanse. Sensors struggled to read anything clearly. It was as if they were staring into a curtain of static. The navigation lights flickered. The engines hummed unevenly. Elias stood on the command deck staring at the swirling darkness ahead. "How deep does it go?" he asked. "Unknown," said Lieutenant Voren. "But long-range scans show a strange echo pattern. It's almost rhythmic." Leora appeared behind them, holding her recording device close. "That's it," she said quietly. "That's the voice I've been hearing." Elias turned. "Voice?" She nodded. "I ran spectral analysis. The frequencies line up almost perfectly with human vocal ranges. It's like someone speaking across light years." He hesitated. "Doctor, you're asking me to fly this ship into a wall of interference based on a sound." She met his gaze steadily. "Captain, that sound is the reason I'm here. My research began with a reference I found in an old digital archive on Earth. It mentioned an unreturned song, a transmission that vanished into deep space centuries ago. I think this is where it ended up. If I'm right, we'll be the first humans to hear our own history answer back." Elias studied her. Her voice carried no arrogance, no demand, only quiet conviction. He had seen that look before, in explorers who risked everything to push one step farther into the unknown. "Very well," he said finally. "Set a course into the expanse. Slow speed. Maintain full sensor coverage." As the ship began its descent into the electromagnetic fog, the stars outside stretched and shimmered. The sound of static filled the air like distant waves on a shore. Leora closed her eyes and whispered, "It's close. I can feel it." Hours passed. The crew grew restless. Instruments flickered, readings spiked and vanished. Then wang a sound. A soft, rhythmic pulse came through the comms, low but unmistakably patterned. Leora's eyes filled with tears. "It's them," she breathed. "It's us." The signal played again, clearer this time. Faint notes of music, a human voice saying words in a long-dead language. The recording from Earth, lost for millennia, now returned as an echo across the stars. The bridge fell silent, the crew frozen in awe. Elias felt his chest tighten. For the first time in his life, space didn't feel empty. It felt alive. He turned to Leora. She wasn't smiling, but her expression glowed with quiet triumph. "I told you," she whispered. "The stars remember us." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The hum of the ship felt different now, softer, as if it carried a hidden melody. Leora's discovery had awakened something in him, something he hadn't felt in years. Wonder. She had walked into his life quietly, a stranger with calm eyes and strange ideas. But now, as the Argent Dawn drifted through the dark sea of echoes, Elias knew this mission was no longer about exploration or science. It was about listening, and whatever waited beyond the silence, humanity was finally ready to hear it. The pulse of the signal lingered in the Argent Dawn long after the first faint echoes reached the bridge. It was subtle at first, a soft rhythm weaving through the ship's comms, almost like a heartbeat. But as hours passed, the pattern grew clearer. Each note, each vibration seemed deliberate, as if someone had carefully composed it centuries ago. And strangely, Elias felt it in his chest, not just in the speakers. A deep resonance that made the silence of space feel alive. Leora had barely slept since the signal appeared. She spent every waking moment in the observatory, analyzing the waves. Her notebook was filled with symbols, musical notes, and equations. Every few minutes, she would press a finger to her headphones, hum softly, or adjust the device she called the resonance tuner. She never left the room for meals, and even the crew began to tiptoe when passing her door. Elias walked in quietly one evening, carrying a cup of tea. "Doctor," he said gently, "you need rest. You've been at this for over 20 hours. "I can't stop," Leora replied without looking up. Her hair had fallen loose, framing her pale but determined face. It's not just a signal. It's a message. Something left for us. We have to understand it before we leave. Elias set the tea down and studied her. A message? From who? She looked up, eyes bright with a mix of awe and exhaustion. From humans and our own kind. Long before anyone ever left Earth seriously. It was sent into space as a simple transmission. Music, greetings, coordinates of our planet. But someone or something preserved it, repeated it, and sent it back. Somehow, across time and distance, he raised an eyebrow. Across time? That's impossible. Signals lose energy. Even light takes years to travel that far. This would have faded 1,000 times over. Leora's lips curved faintly. Yes, but that's what makes it remarkable. We're hearing a message older than any living memory, a memory that never died. The next morning, the crew gathered on the observation deck to witness Leora's work. The rhythmic pulses of the signal now translated into visual patterns on the large display screens. They were mesmerizing, interlocking spirals of light, patterns repeating with subtle variations. Ensign Raoul, who had been skeptical since Leora's arrival, whispered, "It's beautiful. Almost like it's alive." "Exactly," Leora said softly. "The signal isn't just information. It's structured like thought, emotion, intention. Someone created it, hoping we'd hear and respond." Elias frowned. But who could have done this? Humans couldn't have traveled that far back then. Leora shook her head. "Not traveled physically, Captain. But they left something in the signal. A trace of themselves, like a fingerprint of consciousness. It's as if the signal remembers them." The captain felt a chill despite the warm atmosphere of the room. This wasn't science fiction. This was reality, and it was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Over the next few days, Leora's decoding work began revealing patterns resembling language. It wasn't spoken words as they knew them, but sequences that could be interpreted as messages. Short phrases emerged, some simple, some profound. The first phrase that could be translated completely read, "We reach into the dark. Remember us." The crew went silent. Even Lieutenant Voren, who was always quick with sarcasm, stared at the screen. Elias felt a lump in his throat. They're asking us to remember them?" "Yes," Leora whispered, "and perhaps to answer back." It was at that moment that she heard it again, faint but distinct in her headphones, a soft whisper beneath the pulses. No one else heard it. She froze, listening. Elias noticed her pause. "Doctor?" She shook her head slowly. "It's responding. To me. To you. Yes, I don't know why. It's almost personal. As if it recognizes someone listening carefully enough." The bridge fell silent. Elias looked out the large observation window. The stars stretched into lines of light as if the universe itself were bending toward them. A strange feeling filled the ship. Anticipation, wonder, and fear all at once. Over the following hours, Leora began experimenting. She played back portions of the signal, sending slight variations in tone and rhythm. Each time the response changed subtly, a faint echo, a note here, a harmonic there. It was as if the universe was trying to have a conversation with her. She wrote in her notebook, "It's not alien. It's human. But more than that, it's something human left behind that continues to live, to respond. Its memory made audible, and I can hear it." Elias watched her from the bridge, feeling a mixture of awe and unease. He had commanded ships through battles, explored uncharted planets, and survived cosmic storms that shredded hulls and instruments alike. Yet this quiet, pulsing memory, unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. Finally, he spoke. "Dr. Hale, what exactly do you hope to achieve? We've heard the echoes, but what is the goal here?" Leora looked at him steadily. "To understand who we were, Captain. To hear the first humans reach into the void and finally answer back. Perhaps to know that even across centuries our existence matters." Her words hung in the air. Elias felt a sudden clarity. This was not about exploration or discovery in the usual sense. This was about connection, the kind of connection that transcended space, time, and even death. The signal became stronger over the next week. Instruments that had once shown only static now revealed complex harmonic structures. Even the youngest crew members were captivated. Small musical sequences formed, sometimes repeating like refrains in a song. Sometimes the patterns resembled shapes familiar to humans, stars, planets, and even abstract representations of hands reaching out. One night, as the argent dawn drifted through a particularly dense patch of interference, Leora finally spoke the words she had been holding back. "Captain, I think I can join it." Elias's eyes widened. "Join it?" She nodded, her gaze steady, calm, almost serene. "I can use the resonance tuner to synchronize with the signal fully. Not physically, of course, but in mind, I can listen to it in ways no one else can. It's the only way to truly understand what it is saying." Elias felt a sudden surge of panic. "Doctor, that could be dangerous. We don't know what it might do to your brain, your consciousness." She smiled faintly. "The danger is minimal. I've prepared for weeks. I just need your permission." He hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. But we monitor everything. I don't want any surprises." The procedure began in the observatory. Leora sat in the center, the resonance tuner attached to her head like a delicate crown. The crew gathered outside the reinforced glass, silent. The ship itself seemed to hold its breath. Slowly, her eyes closed. A soft hum filled the room, blending with the pulses of the signal. The lights of the observatory flickered in harmony with the waves. And then, something remarkable happened. The patterns on the display began to change. Simple repetitions evolved into shapes resembling musical sentences, then phrases. Notes turned into something like words. And for the first time, the crew began to perceive them as more than sound. The message was alive. It had emotion, rhythm, and meaning. Leora's lips moved almost imperceptibly, as if she were singing along to the echoes in her mind. Elias realized that she wasn't just listening, she was communicating, reaching out through centuries to those who had sent the signal. The first phrase emerged clearly. "We were here. Remember us. Speak back." Elias felt tears prick at his eyes. Here in the cold silence of space, the human race was speaking to itself across time, and Leora, quiet and unassuming, had become its voice. Hours later, the procedure ended. Leora opened her eyes slowly. She looked exhausted but radiant, as though she had touched something extraordinary. She turned to Elias. "They're not just signals," she whispered. "They're memory. They're hope. They're proof that even across centuries humanity leaves echoes, and I think they waited for someone to listen properly." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've changed everything, Doctor. Not just for this ship or this mission, but for everyone who comes after. Humanity will never forget this." She nodded. "And I will never forget them. They reached out to us first, quietly, and now we answer." As the argent dawn drifted further into the Sirion expanse, the stars outside no longer seemed distant or cold. They pulsed faintly, almost as if the universe itself were alive, listening, remembering, responding, and in that quiet, infinite space, the echoes of the first humans finally found a voice that would never fade again. The argent dawn drifted silently through the Sirion expanse, deeper than it had ever gone before. Space seemed to thicken around the ship, a subtle fog of electromagnetic waves carrying the distant heartbeat of a message that had traveled centuries. The crew moved with quiet reverence, their usual chatter replaced by the soft hum of machines and the low pulsing rhythm of the signal. Captain Elias Marin sat on the bridge, staring at the display. Each wave, each pulse now carried meaning, fragments of human memory recorded long before any of them were born. And in the center of it all was Leora Hale, the quiet woman who had walked into his life without notice and now held the key to humanity's oldest echo. She worked tirelessly in the observatory, headphones on, eyes closed, hands moving over the resonance tuner with delicate precision. Every now and then, she would hum softly along with the signal. The notes and pulses she followed were no longer random. They were deliberate, almost musical, a conversation across time waiting for someone who would listen. Elias could see the toll it had taken on her. Her pale face was framed by loose strands of hair. Dark circles shadowed her eyes and her hands trembled slightly with exhaustion. Yet there was a glow to her expression, a quiet triumph that filled the room with warmth despite the cold, dark void outside. It had been days since she first synchronized fully with the signal. During that time, she had discovered patterns that were unmistakably human. Laughter, simple greetings, even fragments of songs sung long ago on Earth. The resonance tuner had allowed her to not only listen but respond, and the echoes had changed subtly with each interaction, as if the signal remembered her presence. "Captain," she said one evening, breaking the silence of the observatory, "I think they're trying to tell us something more. Something important, Elias stepped closer. What do you mean, Doctor? She gestured to the display, where waves of light now formed shapes reminiscent of human handwriting, abstract but unmistakable. These aren't just memories, she explained. They're instructions. A message meant to guide us. Whoever sent this wanted us to reach them, or at least to understand that our voices, our lives, matter in the grand story of the universe. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying someone left this for us intentionally? Perhaps, she said softly. Or maybe it's humanity itself. We sent the first message, yes. But in a way, the signal has taken on a life of its own, preserving our earliest hopes and dreams. And now it wants to connect again. That night, Elias could not sleep. He wandered the corridors of the ship, pausing often to look out at the endless stars. Normally, space made him feel small, insignificant, a solitary human in an infinite void. But now, the knowledge of the signal, of humanity reaching out across centuries, made him feel something else entirely. Belonging. The next morning, a new pattern appeared on the observatory display. Leora's eyes widened. Captain, this is different. It's personalized. Elias frowned. Personalized? To us? She nodded. Yes, the signal has adapted to our responses. It knows we are listening, and it's trying to speak to each of us in a way we can understand. The display pulsed, then formed shapes resembling faces. Human faces, abstract but familiar. Some looked young, others old. A child's laughter echoed faintly through the speakers. A soft female voice whispered words Leora translated in real time. You are part of the story. Remember us. Live and let our voices carry on. Elias felt tears prick his eyes. He had faced battles, witnessed loss, and traveled farther than most humans ever would. But never had he felt such profound connection. The signal was not just a message from the past. It was a bridge, a living memory of all that humanity had been, reaching into the present. Over the next week, Leora continued her work decoding the signal more fully. She discovered small instructions embedded within it. Patterns for building devices, mathematical formulas, even music compositions that had never been heard before. Each discovery carried a simple truth. Humans had always been reaching outward, trying to connect with the universe. And now, in some mysterious way, the universe was reaching back. One evening, as the ship floated through a calm region of the expanse, Leora called Elias to the observatory. She was holding a small, glowing device she had reconstructed from the signal's instructions. This, she said, is what they wanted us to find. A resonance amplifier. It can project the signal farther, clearer, so that anyone listening, humans or not, can finally hear it. It's a gift from the past to the future. Elias examined the device, feeling its hum in his hands. And you think it will work? She smiled faintly. It has to. Otherwise, all of this, all the voices, all the memories, would have been lost again. We are the ones they trusted to listen. And now, we can speak back. The next step was the most delicate. Leora connected the amplifier to the ship's systems, carefully calibrating it to synchronize with the pulses of the original signal. The crew watched silently, holding their breath as the soft hum of the device blended with the echoes in the air. Slowly, the waves began to change. The abstract faces on the display smiled faintly. Shapes resembling hands reached outward. The air seemed charged with energy, warm and alive, as if the stars themselves were responding. Leora closed her eyes and whispered along with the pulses. We hear you. We remember. And we answer. The bridge lights flickered, and for a moment the argent dawn felt suspended outside of time. Then the waves surged, forming a brilliant pattern of light across every display. Elias realized what it meant. They had completed the cycle. Humanity's first message, lost for centuries, had finally found an echo strong enough to carry it forward. Hours passed, and the pulse gradually softened. The device hummed steadily. A quiet reminder that the signal still lived, still responded. Leora opened her eyes, exhausted but radiant. She looked at Elias and the crew. They're at peace, she said softly. The voices are quiet now, but they will never fade. Humanity's earliest reach into the void has been answered, and it will echo forever. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, overwhelmed. You did this, Doctor. You listened, and because of you, something older than time itself has been heard again. She shook her head. I didn't do it alone. We all did. Humanity sent the message and we answered it. The echoes belong to all of us. For a long moment the ship floated in silence, filled with a sense of wonder and accomplishment unlike anything Elias had ever known. The expanse, once cold and empty, felt alive, a living memory of hope and persistence. Days later, as the Argent Dawn began its journey back toward known space, the crew noticed something extraordinary. Small signals, faint and delicate, began appearing on the long-range sensors, echoes of other messages, other human broadcasts that had been drifting in the void for centuries. Each one seemed connected, forming a subtle web of communication that stretched across light years. Leora smiled quietly to herself. "They're waiting," she said. "Every human voice, every memory is part of this vast network. And now we're part of it too." Elias nodded, looking out at the endless stars. "You came into my life quietly, Dr. Hale," he said. "And now, you've changed it forever. Not just mine, but the whole of humanity's." She looked at him calm and serene. "I only listened. That's all it ever took. Sometimes the quietest person can hear what others cannot." Months later, back on Earth, the findings of the Argent Dawn became a source of wonder. Scientists, historians, and artists studied the signals, recreating the songs, the formulas, the messages. Children listened to the echoes of voices long gone and laughed, sang, and learned that humanity's earliest dreams were alive again. But Elias and Leora never forgot the quiet hum of the expanse. They often sat together listening to the recordings they had brought back, marveling at the thought that someone, somewhere, centuries ago, had reached into the void, hoping to be remembered. And humanity had finally answered. In the quiet moments when the world seemed still, Elias would hear a faint, familiar melody, a soft rhythm that carried through space and time. And he would smile, remembering the day a quiet woman walked into his life and left echoes that never faded, because some voices, once heard, truly last forever.